If you can't express your views, you can't take part in the political process, you have no means of knowing what's going on, and you have no means of making choices about your own life or making anything better for yourself.
Without freedom of speech, there's no political life, there's no social life.
Democracy is not a given. It's a daily fight. It's not something natural that comes like that. It's a fragile thing in the societies. The societies have the temptations to go away from democracy.
I cannot imagine a world where freedom of speech would be hampered, would be diminished.
There is a general crisis which everybody's involved in about the attack on civil liberties, the problems about anti-terrorism legislation, and the fact that governments are much, much less tolerant of dissent than they have been. And we see that in the way that activists, such as those with Greenpeace and others, are targeted very often by security forces, and they're quite disproportionate punishments are actually sort of meted out to activists and protesters. So that's a major problem.
You can be a criminal if you protest. You can be considered as a criminal or dealt with as a criminal if you, for example, organize a protest against energy providing companies, like it was the case with Greenpeace in Belgium, or when you hand out information on political prisoners in Turkey. You can be considered as even as a terrorist.
We see that the European Court, which is really elaborating these values and principles on freedom of expression, is taking a step backwards. So the level seems to be decreased, and I think we should be very vigilant to that, not to give up this treasure of civil rights and human rights protection.
The problem about the anti-terrorist agenda, and this is the 10th anniversary of September the 11th, so it's a good moment to have a look at what the consequences have been in the last 10 years. In almost every country in the Western world and many beyond, new laws have been introduced in the name of anti-terrorism, but which are little more than new attempts by government to try to either discipline dissent or to control information in the name of national security.
Terrorism has become the biggest fear of the population, and it's of course legitimate to have fear of terrorism and to fight terrorism. It's no question about that. But the fear is so big that we're going too far. Our governments are going too far.
Fighting against terrorism is one thing, but we shouldn't give up the fundamental values we have been building up for decades here in Europe.
The real power is shifted from the parliament to the governments, which can be worrying. The parliament has to control the government, and the public has to control the parliament. It doesn't work right now.
My message would be for everybody who has something to say that's not in accordance with the policy of governments, that they should continue with that.
My engagement in this discussion was not only to talk about the problems of facing journalists, but also to encourage much more cooperation and coalition building between journalist groups and media, independent media, groups like Greenpeace and others, to try to sort of stimulate a new debate in society about the need to protect civil liberties and to get back to an information system which will truly inform people about what they need to know.
I think it's very important that we all have a discussion about what the value of protest is, why we should be able to exercise it, and what are some of the restrictions and the problems around it.
The defense of freedom of expression is not our core business, but at the same time, our core business wouldn't be possible without that freedom of expression. So that's surely one of the conclusions of today's meeting, that we have to defend it, and maybe not alone, but also with trade unions, with other NGOs, and also with journalists and media, because I guess we are the most concerned by that concept of freedom of expression, and therefore we have to defend it together.